Welcome to this episode of In Conversation With. As you can tell, for the first time we've been able to shoot it as we originally intended in person and not over a Zoom link. And if you hear a bit of background noise, that's because we decided to do it in our office because everyone's been stuck at home, it's all been very stale, and well, it's quite a nice thing to be able to do it and have a few people around. I'm lucky today to be joined by Beckie. Thanks for taking the time to come down from Manchester, as well as the film crew who came down from Manchester. I feel really bad dragging everyone down to London for the day. But,
no, don't be daft.
Thanks for taking
It's
the
actually
time.
quicker to get to London than sometimes it is to get into Manchester from where I live. So
yeah. So my wife's from Salford, and every now and then we talked about moving to Manchester, and then you kind of talk to her friends about the commute that they've got on the motorway, and it's like,
M60,
or the East Lancs or something, and it's like,
no, don't do it.
No. Anyway, that aside,
Yeah.
Co-founder and CEO of Tech Returners.
Yep.
Who are Tech Returners?
So Tech Returners support people returning to tech after a career break. So people who've had an established technology career and had a career break for many reasons and looking for opportunities to transition back. So we provide upskilling opportunities in technology and also personal development, and work with companies, then they transition back into roles within them.
And when you say working with people to help them back in, are we talking any level of opportunity, or is it particular parts of the market where you tend to find there's a bit more traction?
Yeah, software engineers.
Yep.
So established software engineers, on average around a 6 to 7 years experience, and then had a career break, and they have all the foundations there, but as tech moves so quickly, they just need upskilling in their current technologies to then transition back. And it's confidence at the end of the day, you know, they've lacked the confidence, they've lacked those opportunities, they've probably turned away for having a career break on their CV, and they're just looking for that support to transition back into technology.
And when we say upskilling, are we talking about specific kind of running training courses around here's some coding skills, kind of working with the clients and going, right, this is our tech stack, therefore it'd be a really good idea if you knew C# or .NET or whatever else.
Very much so.
Maybe slightly out of date maybe with my languages. I've been out of technology recruitment myself for a bit too long maybe. But that aspect of things, or is it more softer skills and coaching?
No, both. So we work in blocks, so everybody goes through a fundamentals block, and then depending on in terms of which sponsor partner that we work with, there's like a front end block which focuses very much on React, and then the back end block that can focus on Java, it can focus on JavaScript, C#, etc. And then they transition. But underpinning that, we do a lot of career readiness support. So one-to-ones, personal profiling, confidence and resilience, growth mindset, all of those to support them.
So where did the idea come from your perspective? Where did you go, you know what, this is an area that I want to work in and contribute towards? Yeah,
so it's all about my own personal experience. So my background is people, HR and technology. So I've been involved in that for 18 years. 15 of those years I've been involved in the tech industry. So scaling high growth tech businesses through the value of people. So my last role before Tech Returners, I sat on a leadership team and I was the only woman around that table.
Right.
8 years ago, I left to have a short-term career break and had my first child, Ethan. And I noticed as I sort of transitioned back, not only was I a minority as a woman in tech, but also a parent in tech. And I started to reach out to see, you know, was I the only one? Was there anybody else out there that, you know, was feeling like I did? Because even though it's only a short-term break, tech moves so quickly. Everything on networking seemed to be in the evening, so I couldn't attend because I had a young family. And both of those combined really impacted my confidence. So when I started doing a bit more research and realising there wasn't that much support out there in Manchester, myself and a lady called Arzu set up Women in Tech North. So we're a community meetup group, can be found on meetup.com, and we've grown organically over the past 5 years, and we're the third largest women in tech community globally. And through that work, it became more and more apparent the lack of support for people wanting to transition back into technology after a career break. So me and my co-founder James, we decided back in 2017 just to see whether there was an actual demand. So we were both consulting at the same time. We both worked together previously at the same organisation, both had the same vision and aspiration. And we just offered free, accessible upskilling for people looking to transition back into technology. We did 2 pilot projects. The first one was 100% female, the second one 90% female, with successes of women going back into companies such as AO.com, Auto Trader, Think Money, and Heather, who's actually our first ever tech returner, has come full circle and now is one of our tech coaches and now pays it forward to our current tech returners. So then after then, we knew we had something, but we wanted to remain true to one of our most important core values, accessibility. So nobody who goes through an upskilling program has to pay for the program. It's something that I'm exceptionally passionate about. The barriers are high enough around getting more diversity in technology, and we don't need a financial barrier as well.
So I imagine that sets you apart actually from some of the other skills and training courses that are out there.
Exactly. There's amazing boot camps out there, and everybody has the place in university courses, but we're focusing very much on the market where you can't necessarily go and get a student loan. You're at the time of life where you don't want to be in debt on a credit card or a loan. You've got a mortgage, you've got kids to pay, so you can't find anything between £6,000 and £10,000 to do an upskilling program. So it being our sort of like unique sort of point in the market around being accessible and truly accessible, but also doing it flexible hours. So not doing it, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We very much work around school hours, giving people the autonomy to basically work how they want to work. So we went out to the market and just said, this is who we are. And our first conversation, believe it or not, was with the BBC. And it was like
quite a big employer in Manchester these days.
James and I were like, oh my God, just me and you, and we're speaking to the BBC. And they had a very much ethos exactly aligned to what we wanted to do. They wanted to increase diversity within their engineering team, and all our values just aligned up. So that was our very first programme, which we saw 16 women upskill into technology and transition into careers in the BBC. Some are now which progressed 3 or 4 times over and really successful, still in the organisation as well. And then since then, it's just absolutely, I don't know, in terms of just grown and grown and grown. We've worked with some amazing thought-leading organisations in Manchester, then we scaled to London, and overall we've enabled 120 people back into technology, over 65% being women, over 50% being BAME, and it's just been an amazing, because we're changing people's lives. People write themselves off once they've had a career break. They don't believe that they have those opportunities. So when they see something like our programme, that a lot what we get is, it's too good to be true. What's the catch? And there's no catch. It's basically, if we're going to want more diversity, inclusion within the tech sector, this is one of the areas we need to focus on. The statistic is that 56% of women drop out at that mid-level career point in technology and don't return. So it's all right we're doing all the initiatives up front, but I call it the leaky bucket effect, and that's why I believe the number hasn't changed, because we're pipelining, but then we're losing them, we're not retaining them. So I think we're just one of the many solutions that companies can support with to help people with those opportunities of returning.
You mentioned confidence a couple of times. I find this quite interesting because my wife, when I met her, was an actor. She was on the West End. She did The Tempest with Ralph Fiennes in a lead role. So
amazing.
You'd think quite confident, right? Unfortunately, due to illness, she stopped acting and then looked at a career, funnily enough, in technology and became a technology project manager eventually, but had huge confidence issues about going into a corporate workplace and thinking that her skills were relevant or meant anything or were transferable. And I imagine that is a tale that you're very familiar with. But how do you help people get over that? Especially when, I think externally to friends and family, they have very obvious skills that are hugely applicable to that style of working environment.
Yeah, it's very true. One of the opening elements I talk about in each and every programme is transferable skills. I recently did a talk and really highlighted this. So I talk about it on a day-to-day basis. So I'm a mum of 2 young children, and before 9 o'clock in the morning, I've probably mediated, I've negotiated, I've time managed, I've project managed, just by getting 2 young children out the door before 9 o'clock. And people don't realise the wealth of transferable skills that they have. If they've had a career break, I'm sure like your wife, she wasn't sat there just watching TV for 7 hours a day. There was probably clearly lots of things that she was doing, but we tend to sort of forget that. And companies also don't ask around that. It's almost been that sort of, oh, you got a gap in your CV, let's not talk about it, you know, because obviously they've not done anything, you know. It's sort of like, oh, I can't touch talking about that. But when you start to sort of unpick about what they've probably done personal projects, they've probably done volunteering, they've probably been involved in, you know, maybe schools, all of this wealth of transferable skills. So what we tend to start with is get them to identify what are those skills that they've had and what could be of value to organisations. And that starts the awareness piece of going, yeah, I have actually got something to, you know, offer a future employer. You know, that is something that I can talk about, you know, and it just then starts that gradual process. And it doesn't happen overnight, you know, it's a very, very gradual process around building confidence.
It's interesting that you mentioned about we gloss over that gap. I suppose there must be an element of having to talk to the clients yourselves as well to say, because almost I know when you look at a CV and you see that gap and the hiring manager or the recruiter can sometimes go, well, what were they up to?
Yeah.
But that what were they up to carries quite a negative connotation with it. So how do you broach that with them to get them to look at it differently?
Yeah, so revolutionary, we want to be the thought leaders around this. I want to get rid of the CV. So from my experience around being in recruitment, you know, we've not moved on past this Arial 10 CV, black and white, the same format over and over again. So we've made a commitment to the returners that every partner that we work with going forward, we've introduced a returner profile. So a document which highlights their skills, their experience, all about them and their strengths and qualities to highlight what they've done. Yep. And what they want to do going forward. So there's none of this dates, you know, gaps, etc. Removing the unconscious bias that, you know, companies may have. And it's been revolutionary. Every client that we've won our work with are totally on board with us in terms of changing that way. So it's been amazing. You
talked a little bit at the beginning about meetup groups. It'd be interesting to know what the community has done during the course of the pandemic, because there's been a lot written, certainly from, if you're looking at gender within technology, there's been a lot written from Gartner about how it's been very damaging to the role of women within technology. But I've also spoken to a number of women who kind of go, well, actually, in the long term, that flexibility might be a bonus because it's not a binary choice necessarily anymore between family and work life. How has that community come together, and how has it helped people spot or spy opportunities within technology where they go, you know what, this might be a career that I can move back into? Yeah,
totally agree on that. I think I have to look, my sort of outlook is look at the positives of everything. Unfortunately, I lost my dad through the pandemic. But in terms of from a returner's perspective, like you said, it's opened so much opportunity. There's companies out there that would be horrified if you said 2 years ago, right, everyone's going to work at home, you know, you're not going to have anyone in the office. They're probably like freaked out, but we've been forced to do so. And now companies are really looking at the way that they're working. You know, in terms of flexible working, now isn't going to be a strap line on your website, your careers website. It's actually the norm. So it creates more opportunities for people to be able to do the school run, pick the children up, work what's best for them, and then open up opportunities for more diversity. We've seen with events, you know, like I said, events tend to be in the evening, and we obviously from a community put our events online. So it became more accessible for people to, you know, be feeding the kids while they're online, or, you know, being able to be at home and not travelling back into Manchester. So we saw a really big take up in terms of more people being able to access our content as well. I think we've got a little bit of fatigue around online events, so what we're trying to do is a combination. So on basically in person 1 month, online the next, to make sure that we've got that blended balance for everybody and meeting everybody's needs.
You mentioned that you think it's a bit of a leaky bucket syndrome. How many of your tech returners leave senior roles and come back into senior roles? Or do you find that people who are highly capable are coming in? Because I anecdotally hear stories of people who have been C-level or directors and execs coming in at lower level roles than necessarily they might have done previously. And that almost seems I don't know, unfair in a way?
Yeah.
Is that a hurdle to get them back in at the same level where they can get back around the boardroom table, affect some of those statistics, begin to change the dial a little bit on kind of the unfortunate statistics around white male privilege in boardrooms?
Yeah, totally. So the statistic out there from a piece of PwC research is that there's actually only 5% of women in technical leadership roles across the whole of the UK, which is absolutely staggering. So back in 2018, when I looked into this, I really wanted to change it. So we set up the confidence community. So supporting women looking to transition into those leadership roles and providing, in my opinion, real skills. There's amazing leadership courses out there, but they don't talk about self-awareness, they don't talk about confidence, personal brand and actual leadership skills. So since then we've taken 80 women through that programme and they've led to do TED Talks, win awards, but more importantly, feel more comfortable in terms of them progressing into leadership roles. So our whole ethos there is to develop people to succeed, but most importantly to inspire others. Because again, if we're going to change it, we need those role models for then other women to see in terms of, actually, I can do that, I can be a leader of that organisation. But bringing it back to tech returners, we also did our own piece of research with Manchester Business School, and we saw that on average it was just under £5,000 they earn less when returning. Our current statistics with tech returners is that actually they have a £10,000 increase when they return with one of our organisations.
Really?
And I think it's because we've got a scheme set up. I think in terms of we educate companies around the value of the returner, whereas if they were going, like I said about the career gap, that unconscious bias is going, well, they're starting again. Well, they're not starting again. They've got a wealth of experience and they just need help and support transitioning, which is totally different.
You talked a minute ago about visibility of role models. The reason we're both sat here is because of the Tech Women 100 and the work that we are the city are doing around promoting gender equality within the industry. And we were lucky enough to both be judges for Tech Women 100 this year, and we're going through a spreadsheet at the time of recording just last week, or you might not have done it quite as last minute as me.
I know
Maybe
I
you
did,
did it.
yeah.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. About 100 or so amazing women, either entrepreneurs leading and creating amazing projects. Why are they not more visible?
Well, first of all, big shout out to Vanessa, because the work that she's done is absolutely phenomenal. I've got a huge kudos to her, and to do those awards and to read those nominations, it's just amazing, just fantastic. But it's like you said, why aren't we seeing more of those women on the community circuit? Why aren't we seeing more about those women, those achievements, those projects? Because I don't know how you feel when you go to conferences. I see the same women, and I'll put myself in the same bracket in there.
Same people generally, to be perfectly honest.
Same people.
Yeah.
Talking at conferences, representing women in tech at conferences, when it's the people on that spreadsheet that I want to see.
Yeah.
So back in 2019, I made a pledge. I was 8 months pregnant at the time. Don't do things by halves, to make conferences more accessible.
Right.
I was sick of coming down to London, paying £200 on the train, then paying about another £200 to get into a conference. So I wanted to change this. So in October 2019, we launched Reframe Women in Tech. So a conference for 29 quid, and within that £29 you had free childcare. And also a day of amazing content, reframing the narrative around women, so highlighting amazing role models and women. And we started off the conference when we launched it with no speakers, because we wanted the community to put themselves forward, those people that don't do it on a day-to-day basis, and we would support them in actually them being able to talk at a conference. So it was a day full of people that people hadn't heard of before, but they were able to share their stories, and it was just amazing.
I imagine the ethos of it and everyone knowing that it was perhaps the first time for a lot of those speakers getting up was wonderfully supportive.
Oh yeah, massively. And I think that's what's amazing about the community. Communities as a whole, I think, are just so important to your career. I think we've lost it a little bit. I think you touched upon it in terms of the pandemic. unfortunately a lot of things haven't, you know, continued on or as frequent, and I'm hoping that that comes back, because I think having a supportive community is so important. We see it with Women in Tech North. You know, when people have come to a meetup, we did a mentoring circle on Tuesday evening, and you know, just the feeling that people have once they've been there and met people like them that can support each other, it just gives you a different sort of dimension and support network that you can rely on. So I just think communities are just so important.
Well, look, thank you for taking the time
thank you
to
so
come
much.
down from, despite what you just said about coming down to London. No, but thank you for taking the time to come down
thank you
and
very
talk to us about tech returners.
Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this interview, there are plenty more episodes of In Conversation With on the Harvey Nash Group website. Check that out, and absolutely do have a look at We Are the City and the work that they're doing to try and support the community.